Season just ended, but we've already got some breaking news for Auburn basketball in the transfer portal. Guard KD Johnson will reportedly be entering his name into the transfer portal, the first of the attrition that may or may not be taking place after each and every season. Let's talk about it, react to it, and let's see if we can get our heads around what we just found out. War Eagle Auburn family and a special War Eagle, and welcome to you, our E2C Network family. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching on the replay, however you tuned in, whenever you tuned in. We appreciate you being here and hanging out with us to spend some time being part of our little family within the Auburn family. As I said at the start of this, we have got breaking news that KD Johnson, fan favorite guard of sorts, an enigma, a little psycho, love him to death. But the sad news today, the reality begins to set in at the end of the season that the transfer portal is wide open for folks and they will take advantage of it. KD Johnson has reportedly or plans to enter his name into that transfer portal. That's being corroborated by several Auburn's news sites, non-Auburn sites out there. So the news looks legit. It seems to be the case. And thus, we're going to go with what we know right now and talk about it, react to it a little bit. Obviously, there's a ton of different ways that we can round this out. I obviously want to share some overall thoughts on my part, but I want to hear from you. This is a reaction show, after all, and this is not at a normal time for us. So if you're able to watch live, we especially love to hear some of your thoughts and opinions in the comments section, as long as they are productive. When you get news like this, sometimes people love to use their anonymity. Oh, that's a tough word. To say things they normally wouldn't say to someone in person. So keep that in mind about these type of things. You may love him or hate him, but what you can say is he left a lasting impact on this program, this team this year, and I'm going to miss me some KD Johnson. So I also will give you guys a few maybe stats, things from his career to keep in mind, just so you know what we're losing, what's exiting from the program. Let me start off with my opinions as you guys come in and smash the like button to get started if you enjoy this content. I've always called KD, when I describe him, an enigma. I think, the term psycho has been thrown out there, or our little psycho, and it's become an endearing term. I think all of those apply. KD Johnson was one of those players when he first came into the league, not necessarily Auburn. We'll walk through his path here in just a second. That he frustrates you to no end, whether he's on your team or not, especially if he's not on your team. I remember seeing him in his first year at Georgia. People tend to forget that he started at Georgia and chose to come over to Auburn. How annoying this kid was, not just because of his energy and his drive and all of that, but because of how frustrating he could be trying to get away from him on defense, the way he plays his offense with somewhat of a reckless abandon. And he just tended to be good no matter what he did. Was he perfect? Heck no. But he definitely made an impact when he was on the floor. And those are the type of players that frustrate you. You're just like, how do they just get into our heads? How do they make this impact to this level on this team that they're playing for or against? KD Johnson is one of those. One of the things that I don't want to be lost in the discussions around KD leaving, what we love or hate about him, I want to continue to give him credit for this final year at Auburn before we walk through some things that maybe you're interested in knowing about his career ending, stats and otherwise. I hope you all recognize this year the team-focused approach that KD took. And it's been increasingly so over the trajectory of his career here at Auburn. If you look at stats and stuff, that'll back that up, especially. But KD Johnson came in known as a player that had the reputation of kind of me kind of stuff. At least that's what people wanted to put on him. And, I'm sure he didn't help himself in some regards. But what he did for this team increasingly as he was on it and part of this program was become less about himself and more about the team. KD Johnson, when he would get the ball, he used to do that little through the legs right there at the top of the key and then just throw up a shot. And half the time it would go in. So you would be screaming, no, 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 then yes, 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 all in the same token. But as time went on, you saw him move away from that and become a smarter passer, a really hone in and lock into what he could do defensively. This year, especially, and we talked about it a lot on our post-game live streams, KD Johnson would never light up the stat sheet. And that's a shame because his impact on the team as a whole, what he did in sacrificing time, starting time, because I don't think he started at all this season, if I'm not mistaken, once was a starter and took a step back and focused on how he can best support this team. So I want to give credit where credit is due to KD. That I will miss his enigmatic personality, his chaos, but I will also miss the player that I watched him become at Auburn, and it is very endearing to me. And I hope that's not lost on all of you around there. So obviously we want to talk a few things about, I want to hear some of y'all's reactions as long as they're, again, constructive and productive. We got WT saying they will miss him. I'm sad. I'll miss him from Devin. And she agrees that he improved a bunch this year. And Josh is kind of getting to the heart of the matter here. And I guess let's start there before we maybe look at some of his stats and things like that to definitely round out the show. I want to give you more information than just, oh, it's going to suck, he's gone, which it is. I mean, I think if you're a level-headed person and don't just look to, disparage people, you can recognize that there's a lot of value that KD brings to this team. Josh says too many guards coming in for KD to hang around. So what's happening? And this is kind of one of those segments where we talk about why is this news happening? What does it mean? Well, if you're not aware, you've got obviously a new guard in Tahad Pettiford, who's coming in to be part of the program this year. He's already signed. Of course, these days, who knows if that actually means anything? But as far as we've seen him introduced at a basketball game, all that kind of stuff. So he's coming in. He's considered a point guard, but I've also seen a lot of people talk about him in what's called a combo guard, which means that he can play the point guard, but can be utilized a lot of different places because he's just that talented. So KD leaving is definitely an indication that he feels like his time, I feel like I can say this, is going to be diminishing a little bit more as more people come in. And if you look, again, I keep referencing some stats we're going to look at, you'll see that the trajectory is there, that he can be concerned about that. And you can have a team-focused mentality, and with the transfer portal available to you, it's okay in your final year to want to make the most of what you got out there. There's we already got rid of one comment on Facebook because it's just one of the most ignorant things I said, talking about him being selfish. Well, if he's selfish, then everybody else who utilizes the transfer portal, all those players that you celebrate, football, basketball, baseball, softball, otherwise, that come into the transfer portal, I guess they're selfish too for leaving. So what I see when I look at the story of KD Johnson is a guy that became less and less about himself, and he has one more year to make the most of his time in college, and you have this available to you, why wouldn't you do it? Anyway, that was a little bit more of my soapbox there. But let's talk about why this is happening. Todd Pettiford coming in could be eating up some time. You saw Trey and Aiden really lock into the point guard position, which we all expected. And, we're talking about what we know now. I know there's potential for other things happening out there. You got a guy like Jakai Howard coming in, not necessarily KD's position, but that's going to be some more minutes that potentially are going to be eaten up by him. Maybe there's potential in portal news that we don't know about that's going to be coming down the pipe in terms of guards wanting to come in or not. We shall see. I would imagine those meetings are starting to be had with players about honesty about where they stand in the program, playing time, all that stuff. And I think KD sees that writing on the wall of what he's going to continue to be asked to do. And if he wants to maximize his opportunities, I think that's what you're really seeing taking place right here, right now. We'll miss him, Carol says, big time. He was a spark plug. I haven't heard him called a spark plug, but that's a very good way to describe him. I think that's probably the most positively focused description that you can give. Psycho obviously has those connotations, but we've turned it into the endearing quality that he has. I don't blame him, WT says, for wanting to get as much playing time as he can. If we're going to have so many guards, it would make his time redundant for the team. I wish him all the best. I don't know that it would be redundant, but it will get less and less over time. I agree with that. And that's definitely, I think, what's going on here. Yeah, the news is definitely just breaking now. I waited a little bit to make sure a lot of the other major sites were going to corroborate it before we move forward doing a breaking news segment like this, just because I want to make sure it's not jumping on the very first thing out there. But it does appear that is official. So that's the angle of it. Why is it potentially happening? Probably a playing time thing, 1 year of eligibility. One of the questions was, is KD actually going to play again? I don't see why he wouldn't have, but would he play again at Auburn was the question. Now we know the answer. We can continue to take comments and questions about like what it means, why this is happening, all that stuff. Please drop them in continuously if you're watching live too. But let me give you a few stats. I'm looking at ESPN and Auburn's website to kind of reference a bunch of these things. We'll look at ESPN because they lay it out pretty nicely. I want to point something out to you all. His minutes of his games played, obviously, but minutes as well. His minutes starting in 20. So he started. Let me start over. He started at Georgia and made waves over there, got a lot of attention, and decided to come on over to Auburn and played 16 games in that first season for 22.5 minutes per game. In 2021 to 2022, 34 games played, 27.8 minutes per game. So went up. 2022, 23, we saw a decline even below his first season, 21.9 points per game. And then this season went really low, 17.7 minutes per game. I think I said points earlier, minutes per game, with 35 games played in his final year. So you saw minutes decrease, but I would not say that's necessarily a reflection of KD, because a lot of players saw their minutes decrease because we used 10 people across the board, which is why this team was so good most of the time this year. I know if I say that and don't preface every single thing I say, somebody's going to be like, well, why don't they do it in the tournament? That's why. Just things happen sometimes. Get over it. So minutes definitely declined. His points started higher and then went down over time. 13.5 in his first year, 12.3 in his second year, and third year, 8.9, and then 7.1 in his final year at Auburn. If you're looking at a few of the other stats, he's pretty consistent in terms of steals, definitely higher on the front end. You're going to see consistency for this with more minutes, more playing time. You have a tendency to pad your stats a little bit. His turnovers go down significantly, at least I think it's significantly when you talk about these stats over time. 2.1 in his first season, then 1.8, 1.5, and then 0.9 in his final year. Again, less minutes, but still, there's a trend there that's in a positive light. His rebounds went down a little bit over time. His assists, roughly the same, kind of leveled off over his final 2 years. And yeah, so that's kind of the trend that you see when you look at a lot of his stats over time. Less time, less opportunities, and unfortunately, yes, his stats definitely decreased a little bit over time. So that's some of the things to keep in mind. Let me also give you some information, and we can take some final comments and questions in our reaction stream too, about KD. We're going to go to Auburn's website and talk about some of his highlights, so to speak. They have it listed as his career superlatives. Points, his highest point value was against UConn, ironically enough. We were hoping to see them in the Sweet 16. On the 11, 24, 21, 27 points versus UConn. So his first year, I think that's his first year. Sounds about right. With Auburn, not with UGA. 9 field goals made high against Tennessee in 2021. Let's look. He made 5 different times. He made 4 3-pointers in a game. I'm trying to think of some other cool stats here for you guys to know. Free throws made, 11 versus UConn. That UConn game was really big for him. He never broke above, apparently, according to this, unless they're not counting some of the games from this year, because I would imagine they haven't updated it completely. But based on Auburn's website, 8 rebounds against Alabama in 2022 was his highest rebounding game. 7 assists versus Jacksonville State in 2022. Minutes played against UConn, 37. So he had 51 double-figure games, 20-point games. He had 9 of those. 5 steal games. He had 2 of those and 6 dunks. Feels like he had more than that. But those are a few of the stats maybe for you to keep in mind over the course of when you're thinking about what his impact was, what he was able to accomplish while he was here. And yeah, it was a fun time, definitely a fun time. And we'll see what happens there. Devin points out something that's always a little bit scary. I just hope Katie doesn't transfer to another SEC school. I saw how he treated the Georgia fans. I think the difference is he was there for 1 year. He was here for 3 years, and the jungle loved them some KD more so than I think Georgia fans could have. And Georgia fans, let's be honest, they haven't had a lot to get excited about with basketball over the last few years. So I think when you summarize KD's story into a nutshell, the word psycho probably does mean a lot there, but it also means more than the connotation of just being a negative. He was our psycho, our little psycho that did so much more than, you know, I think people realize sometimes his impact, especially becoming a more team focused player, is evidence from some stats, time, and how he was still productive off the bench. I don't have his plus minus. That's a good category to look at sometimes in terms of someone's effectiveness. Um, that would be something to look at and see if he has a higher plus minus with his, even with his time decreasing, was he more efficient with it? But all that to be said, folks, KD Johnson is leaving. We wish him well. And I hope that he's going to find success in his final year, just like I did for Allen and for everybody else that's left on good terms from Auburn. Final comments, questions, reactions to the breaking news of KD Johnson leaving, we can take as we leave here. Let me remind you of a few things before we take those final comments, questions, and topics of what you got coming up. This is more pertinent if you're watching this like today. If you're watching this replay, fortunately, you're probably going to miss some of these things. But tonight, we got a baseball live stream. Don't miss it. The things that you need to know, plus a reaction type of stream. That's tonight after the Jacksonville State game. Hope you can join us. Auburn Family Nights tomorrow night is a call-in show where we talk about anything and everything. I'm sure we'll talk about this some more. Obviously, drop by if you want to hang out with us. And then next Sunday at 9 Eastern, we will be discussing episode 72 of the Auburn Experience podcast. Sports, culture, family, all of it. It's the Auburn Experience. So, final thoughts, questions. Was he a senior this year? Devin, did he actually graduate? Is that official? I don't know. Or is he going to graduate? I hope so, because to me, that's how you leave. That's how you leave a program, is the right. I don't want to say the right way, but the best way possible is as a graduate. It's really hard for you to be it's my favorite phrase of late, intellectually honest and competent person, to be upset at someone for graduating from your university and then giving one more thing an opportunity. I'll never understand people who get mad at that. So if he is a senior, because he's had 4 years, but he has that COVID year, like everybody still seems to have, that he can use other places and get the opportunity. Droodle says, I find that peculiar. Then I think he could have been a second round NBA pick opportunity. Look, I am not I guess is what you're saying. I am not an NBA draft expert. I will not pretend to be, but I've been following this stuff for a while. I will tell you this just to kind of compare. Janai is and was a very barely in, and that's meaning he kind of raised up his opportunities. Second rounder last year, he would most likely get drafted this year, but I would guess high second round at this point. If Janai is not going to get into the second round, which is, there's only 2 rounds, remember that, I don't think KD would get drafted. He might get opportunities to go play on some of these 2-way deals and get a summer league opportunity, all these different things. I'm not taking that away from him at all. I think with the right system, the right coach, you've seen what can happen with KD, and he can be utilized to his fullest. So he is definitely a talent. I don't know that NBA is necessarily the most direct opportunity, but with 1 more year under his belt, Who knows? Who knows? You just assume that he graduated because he's a senior. I'll have to check. Yeah, I don't know that that's 100% true, but maybe he will graduate and then go do this. That would be a great thing to do. All right. I think we've covered all the main topics, discussions. We talked about the news, what it means for Auburn, what it possibly could mean for the future. Is this the last bit of news? Who knows? There's obviously rumors out there, but obviously we know right now that we're going to miss KD. I miss his craziness, his psychopathic nature in good and bad ways. And boy, did he make Auburn basketball fun as an individual, but as an increasingly better team player as the year went on. And Katie Johnson, if you somehow see this, we love you. We're going to miss you. And of course, we loved having you a part of the Auburn family. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in, hanging out with me on this breaking news reaction show. Until I talk to you again, War Eagle.